I would like you to ask you a question. Do you know any black opera singers? I know one. I used to admire her as I was a child. Barbara Hendricks, an opera soprano singer. But yeah, that's the only one. If I tell you Luciano Pavarotti, Maria Callas, Andrea Bocelli, you might know them. They are part of the most well-known opera singers. Black opera singers tend to be invisible, and so many black talents have contributed and are still contributing to this art. We have, for instance, Marian Anderson, the first black opera singer to sing in the Metropolitan Opera in New York. Leontyne Price, the first black American opera singer to achieve international reputation. Jessie Norman, who won many awards through her career. And Grace Bumbry, known for her role in Carmen in 1969. And no, opera is not a art restricted to white upper class people bourgeois, whether spectators or artists. Black opera singers exist, and they are not only US Americans. They are also South Africans, British, Canadians. As Canadians, we have, for instance, Ottilie Graham, Audrey Dubois, Misha Brugogosman, and Khadija Mbowe, and multidisciplinary artists, sharing with us their journey in classical studies.
Or hello, my name is Khadija, or my Nama is Khadija. Is that correct too? I keep really trying to speak German. This is not working. I'll just speak English.
If you want, we can do in German, but
I won't understand most of it. Like my Nama is like maybe ich bin Khadija. Like that's it. But yeah, I'm a classically trained singer. I am a multidisciplinary artist is what I like to call myself more than anything. I just am very into a lot of different types of performance and kind of fashion myself as a sociocultural anthropologist as well. I just do a lot of stuff is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I saw that. And so how did you come to study classical music, classical studies?
So I started studying it, like I've always studied music in school on and off, and I went to a performing arts high school. So that was where I originally was kind of introduced to more classical styles, but it was mostly choir. And then when I graduated or in high school, a voice teacher told me that I should sing classical music, and I didn't really take it seriously. So then a few years later, I had taken lessons on and off. And then I decided, when I was 23, I was like, okay, maybe I'll try. Maybe I'll actually try and do this classical music stuff. So I applied for school and I got into a classical program. And yeah, that's when I started. That was in 2016 is when I started taking it a bit more seriously.
Okay. But were you passionate about classical music or?
No, at first, no. I was like, Black people don't do this. What is this? I know. Why? I want to sing jazz. And then I realized, oh, we can sing classical music. This is kind of fun. That's the honest truth.
And so what is a typical day of classical studies can look like?
At school, it depends because per year, it gets very different. In your first year, it's probably the most intense because they're trying to see, okay, who do we think is going to actually drop out? Like, let's just throw everything at these students and see who sticks around. But towards the end of my degree, it was mostly performance-based. So, in the morning, it's just a matter of getting to school early. A typical day involves certain classes, either diction classes or performance classes of either French melody, German lieder, English art song, or Italian art song. And so you have those, depending on what year you're in, you have one or two of those. You have performance electives that you can pick from. And then sprinkled throughout that is practicing. And some days you have your lesson with your teacher. Once a week you have that, your private lesson. And then once a week as well for us, we had meetings with our vocal coaches. So those are the pianists that worked with us, help us with our diction, help us, but in case for people that are watching that don't, help us with our diction, help us with our lyrics, making sure that we're singing the right vowels, because half the time we think we're singing a vowel and the person listening is like, I did not get that at all. So that's basically the gist of it. And then if you're in choir, you have choir rehearsal. If you're not, if you're in opera, you have opera rehearsal. Yeah, a very busy kind of schedule, but yeah.
Okay. So is it this time you can determine your vocal range or not? What is the difference between like the vocal range and the fact that you're a soprano?
The difference, it's kind of, so you can be a soprano and not have the same vocal range as another soprano. Vocal range is just where you're comfortable singing at, the range in your voice where you're comfortable singing at. Not all sopranos that I know are comfortable singing as low as I am, and I am not comfortable singing E6s up there. Like, that's too high for me, but there are sopranos that can. So within we call it the Fach system. So within all of that, it's just the differences within the umbrella term of soprano, you just have many different types of sopranos, and that can also determine your vocal range and like how that works out. So, soprano is like the highest one. It's a typical one. People in choir will usually say alto, but in opera, you'd call them mezzo soprano because it's middle voice. And then you have contraltos, which are really low singers. They're probably a rarer voice type for women. Then we go into tenors and baritones and basses, because tenors sing higher for men. Tenors are like the sopranos of men. You have basses or baritones, which sing a little bit higher than basses, but they still have lower voices. And then basses are like low, low, low. And within that category as well, you do have countertenors, which would fit more in the mezzo-soprano range. And those are men that can sing within that range. Not everyone fits into like 7 or 8 or 12 classifications of voice. Everyone's voices are so different. So you might have some attributes. As a soprano, you can sing higher. Your voice, your first passaggio is usually in and around E, F sharp. Okay, maybe your middle voice is not that great. Lower around G and A, you suffer there because you're like not comfortable. And those are kind of tells of like, oh, you're a soprano, you're most likely. And the ease of singing up top, but then that can just vary depending on the voice. So I appreciate voice systems. Like, I appreciate the Fox system, but I stopped obsessing over it a while ago because there are just so many different variants. I just say I'm a soprano. I can sing high. My voice breaks where a soprano's quote is supposed to break, and I think I have a regular soprano color.
So how was it for you, like studying as a Black person in classical studies and being like basically like the only one Black person?
Yeah, it was tough. There were a few other Black students actually, but it was very difficult because I've been used to being in spaces where I'm one of the only Black people. Like, it's never a surprise for me, especially living in Canada. But I think with that, it just started to wear on me a lot more. Started to wear on the way I created, the way I thought about creating. For the longest time, I felt like I had to force myself into this box of what it means to be an opera singer, and I didn't feel like I fit into it. So I wasn't sure what I was even doing or why I was even pursuing it. And it's only now, being out of school, that I've realized, okay, I I can choose how I want to be a classical musician or how I want to be this type of artist. And just because I didn't have a exact blueprint to look up to or see around me doesn't mean that I can't make one for myself. Even though this is a very antiquated style of music, it has so many traditions and all of these things, but I don't know. It's definitely it's an interesting career choice. One that I am like half in, half out. It just kind of depends. But yeah, it was definitely a struggle for the first few years until I just decided, okay, I just need to get my degree and get out of here. And yes, the world of classical music is going to be the same to an extent, but I think because of everything that's been going on, I'm hearing a lot more conversations about the problems with opera and the problems with the lack of representation that I wasn't hearing before, even up until I graduated. So I oddly have hope. I'm just like, it was a tough experience.
Okay. And did you feel like you had kind of support or not?
I'd say my friends were very supportive, and I think my like private voice teacher and my coach were very supportive for sure, because they were the ones that I dealt with on a weekly basis, so they knew what I was struggling with. And my friends as well, I would be very honest with them about how I was feeling. But yeah, I would say that I did have support in that, because I also had friends that weren't in music that I could talk to, which to me was a great help.
But do you feel like you can? Is it like a topic you can talk about? You can be very open about it? Because when I was working in theater, for example, I feel like it was kind of a taboo, like to talk about racism, microaggression. And,
I feel like definitely before, like, I feel like everyone had a hard time talking about it, or they didn't really want to listen. And it's like, it took someone being murdered in front of y'all for you to be like, oh, this is still a problem. Oh, whoops. I feel like it's very that, which has its own problems. Like, but humans, we're flawed. We are all very flawed. We have a hard time, even though we want to admit it. A lot of us have a really hard time empathizing with people who don't have the same life as us. We just don't. We all think that we're better than we actually are. And I don't mean it to sound cynical, but I just think so many of us really overestimate how kind we are and compassionate and understanding. So I think in those spaces, like you're saying, it was hard for you to talk about these things. I think because people, wanted to live in denial, because, they think, oh, well, I'm a good person. I would never ask you questions about your hair. I would never be this way. What do you mean? I'm not racist. And it's like, girl. So it definitely, like, when I brought up something in my second year of university, I brought it up to the head of the voice department. I was just like, y'all don't have any Black people on faculty. You don't bring in any Black people to teach us. What are we going to do about it? Like, I just was like, I need to have a conversation with you, because I am very like to the point. I don't like to play around. I don't like nonsense. I don't like when people are saying something to my face and it doesn't look legit. I'm like, I'm very like skeptical in that way. So even though it was difficult to talk about and people didn't like to hear it, I still would bring it up. Specifically, I try to be strategic about it though. Like, I would only talk to people that I trusted or people that I knew would actually make a change. I didn't go around telling everyone, because it just exhausts your energy to talk to people that are just never going to understand. But I don't know. I definitely feel like after I said all the things, and I said it on a YouTube video of all places, just like put my school on blast. After that, it seemed like people wanted to hear what I had to say. And I was like, all right, well, here we go. Opera is racist. Let's talk about it. It's like, y'all really want to hear it. All right, well.
Okay. So how do you feel right now you've been graduated recently? And how do you feel like being graduated during pandemic time and in classical studies?
Like, my degree was useless. That's terrible. That's terrible. Don't only take that clip out. please, please don't only put that clip in and be like, Khadija hates her degree. No. Oh no. I think it's been very interesting. It's kind of funny to me because I'm just like, we can't do anything. Like, we literally, if you're a performer, you're just looking at your debt, your degree, and anything like, I'm a sucker. Like, you just feel like so foolish because even though people used art and everything to get themselves through the pandemic, nobody's willing to admit that artists need to be paid or like taken care of or looked after. So you have all of these artists that weren't unionized or anything, just sitting, canceled gigs. They don't get money for it. Nothing. Yet people are like, oh, well, they're just artists. It doesn't matter. It's like, what would you be doing if there wasn't art during this pandemic? Yeah. What would you have done? You know? So that's a tangent of me getting upset with people not paying artists what they should. I just get really passionate about it. But I think graduating through the pandemic, it sort of was a blessing for me in a weird sort of way because I didn't have any opportunities lined up. Like, I didn't get into any young artist programs, which is what a lot of classical singers will do all over the world. A lot of Canadians trying to go to Germany. But like, I didn't get any of that. I didn't get into any grad schools. So I literally was like, I'm doing nothing next year. So all of this happened and I was like, well, I wasn't doing anything anyway. So, and it just kind of gave me room to like put my music, my classical training on the back burner for a little bit and focus on other things that I wanted to create. And that's literally why the YouTube channel even happened. Because I was just like, oh, let me just try and do this. Like, I haven't had the time because studying classical music is like a full-time investment, like all the time. I didn't have the time before. And now I've got a bit of time and a bit of energy. You know, I'm not questioning my talent every 2 minutes. So why don't I just, try this YouTube stuff?
Okay. And do you think like YouTube can be like an alternative for your career or?
I don't know yet. That remains to be seen. I feel like it's fun and I enjoy doing it and I want to do it as long as possible, but I know nothing lasts forever. So I'm not banking on doing it forever or that, people are going to care what I have to say forever. Like, we all have a short attention spans. It'll be this way for a while and then eventually it'll slow down. And that's totally fine because I'm still trying to be open to as many possibilities that I can get from having the YouTube that I think I would have had more access to as opposed to just singing classically.
Okay. And what do you think are the reasons why there is such a huge like glass ceiling that's like prevent from having like more diversity?
I think there's a few. For me, I always like to think of it as a top-down, bottom-up approach. So like the top down, you just don't have people of color in these positions in leadership. You don't have them on the board of directors for a lot of these programs. And so, people have their own internalized implicit biases. And if the board of directors, the director, all the people behind the scenes are all white, even if they don't want to admit it, there are certain tropes and things that they associate with Black people or Asian people or Indigenous people, just because of what they've seen or what they haven't seen, right? Because we need to be able to acknowledge difference. People look different than us. That's okay. But people have such a hard time doing it. They don't want to. So they try to act like they're treating you the same, but they aren't really because they're ignoring their own bias and then society's bias on top of it. It's like, oh my God. So you have that problem from the top. And just historically, people will talk about eugenics in music. People will talk about the highbrowness of classical music and how they viewed music by people of color as less intelligent. The harmonic structure isn't there. The rhythmic structure, whatever they wanted to excuse to say that this westernized genre of music is better than this other style. That's something that there are papers that have been written about. But you have that approach, the historical, because nothing is just in a vacuum. It's all many things. So you have the history, you have the board of directors, you have the people, you have everyone's individual biases. And then you go from the bottom up and it's like and I don't know what your background with classical music is, but for me, I didn't see Black people doing that. So I didn't think that I could. And I had a teacher show me Jesse Norman, and I was like, oh, I guess we do that. But if you don't see stuff like that, you don't think that that's a possibility. It's honestly a fluke that I even managed to become trained in classical music. Like, it doesn't make sense from where I came from how I look, none of it. And even I could have a white friend that looks exactly like me and people would still be like, you sing opera? Like, people just don't associate it with young people wanting to study it or looking the way we do. And, you know, so you have the bottom up of people not seeing themselves in this art form, and then also the art form not doing its part to reach out to people in those communities, to engage with the community around it. Opera companies, and I don't know if this is like this in Germany, but in Canada, they're all like, we got to get young people. How do we get young people? And they keep asking, and young people try to tell them and they just don't listen. We're like, hey, so maybe they're like, shut up. We're trying to figure out how to get young people. And we're like, okay, okay, you know, like, so I think it's both of those things kind of sandwiching in. And then if you're one of the few that makes it through that filter to get up to the board of directors, up to those positions, it's even harder. It's like, it's just, yeah, it is that glass ceiling of just like, damn, like, I can't. Because in a weird way, it's like they're standing on it, looking down at you. And you're like just banging up like, girl, like I made it all the way here. I came through all of the things. I'm here. And they're just like, we can't hear what? Like, yeah, sorry, that was a weird visual.
It's fine. And do you have like anything else to say or?
To add, oh gosh, I would just say that one thing that I want any young singer, especially if you're a singer of color, to remember is that you have way more agency and authority than you think. A lot of these teachers and institutions and stuff, they have more experience, you know, but they're not better than you or smarter than you. They're not living your life. So if you want to make changes about something, if you're like, this doesn't sit well with me, I want to do something else, then go do that. For me, I was very upset with all of this stuff. I was frustrated by it, and out of all that frustration came YouTube and all this other stuff. But I don't think people actually know about it because I haven't really talked about it too much, but I run a music program now. And our whole goal is to make sure that that inaccessibility is moved away so that it's not even an excuse anymore. And obviously not everyone, we've got great mentors helping us and all of this stuff. So we're very fortunate, but you know, obviously not everyone has access and things like that. But I just think people should give themselves way more permission to dream what they want and try to see it to fruition, and just like fuck all of these other people who are trying to make you think that like they hold all the power and you have to be beholden to them. Go make your own shit. Like, that's my thing. I'm just like, I don't have the patience to wait for somebody to give me permission for something. No, I'm just going to make it myself so I don't have to answer to anybody but myself and the people that I work with, you know?